I want to know what ChatGPT got wrong, though.
Everything.
The various legal systems around the world are, for the most part, hugely complicated, lumbering dinosaurs in desperate need of overhaul and modernization. When I left school, I briefly considered pursuing a career in law and contacted what was then known as the Braille Learning Library to borrow a few textbooks, just have a read through and see if it was something that I could hold my interest. Several days later, 15 boxes, each containing 2 Braille volumes, arrived at my door. I'm slightly ashamed to admit that these boxes remained stacked and unopened in my mother's hallway for at least 6 months. In fact, they would probably still be in the same place to this day had they not been stolen during a burglary. What the Who breaks into someone's house and steals Braille books for blind people? What the what value does that have?
Knowledge is power.
Today's video is brought to you by our longtime friends over at Squarespace. Thank you, Squarespace. Whether you are a content creator like me or you're navigating the challenges of starting a business, Squarespace helps you stand out and succeed online. Let me tell you about the features that have transformed my online presence. First of all, Fluid Engine. You take one of Squarespace's beautiful templates, you use Fluid Engine to customize it to your needs, and even someone like me who has absolutely no design skills in their body and very minimal tech skills can make a beautiful looking website just like that. It's basically just next generation drag and drop technology. You won't have to worry about a thing. You will build a website that looks amazing in a couple of hours, and then when you need to tweak it, you just log into Squarespace and you're like, cool, just add that bit, take that bit away, do that, add that picture. It's ridiculously easy. You have to have no skills whatsoever to be able to make a good looking website with Squarespace. Plus, they've got courses, so if you've got some knowledge that you want to share with the world and charge them for it, make some money, well, Squarespace courses allow you to do that. You upload your videos, you set up a paywall, bada bing, bada boom, you're good to go. Plus, the Squarespace extensions, which are third-party tools which expand your website's functionality enormously. It's basically a tech toolbox allowing you to do a whole bunch of extra stuff with Squarespace. Plus, they've got email campaigns and a whole lot else. Look, when you're ready to elevate your online presence, all you need to do is go to squarespace.com/blaze. You'll get a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/blaze and you'll get 10% off your first purchase using the promo code BLAZE. So that's nice. Get on Squarespace today. If you don't have a website, it's absolutely the way to go. Check them out. Link below. And now back to today's video. Even now, I look back on that burglary with some amusement, as you should. By the way, Dave writes this. He's blind. Obviously, I'm not. Right? So that's what happens here. Dave writes it, I read it. Due to the fact that it occurred just before Christmas and whoever carried it out had taken the time to watch the house in order to make sure that Jake, my mother's 16-stone Japanese Akita, was out, I can only imagine that upon opening the front door, they were absolutely delighted to find a huge stack of potential Christmas gifts just waiting to be removed. Oh, I see. They think there's something else. Can you imagine the disappointment? It's like, we've just stolen a bunch of Braille books.
Joke's on you, I'm into that shit.
I can also imagine the disappointment they felt later when they opened each promisingly heavy box only to discover that they all contained heavy Braille books. Anyway, as you must all by now know, I did not in fact pursue a career in law, instead electing to spend my formative college years getting drunk, high, and occasionally studying a little bit of music. However, my vague interest in some things legal never really went away, and from time to time I'll become briefly fascinated with one legal issue or another and consider looking into the whole topic in more detail. That is, of course, until I remember that Simon pays me to do actually interesting research, whereupon I forget about the law and go on with that instead. As you should, Dave. I also pay you for it. On this occasion, though, I've been fortunate enough to be able to do a bit of both. I can look into the exceptionally questionable ways in which the pardon powers of American presidents have been used, something I've always found interesting, and even better, get paid to do so. Yeah, pardons are weird, right? Like the outgoing president's just like, here's a list of people who I think should be pardoned. They're my mates. Let them out of prison. So please join me as we look at some of the most dubious presidential pardons in history. This should be a fun one. I like this stuff. I'm also interested in this. Donald Trump pardons Michael Flynn. Before the comment section gets broken, I'm fully aware that any mention of former President Donald Trump is likely to cause some controversy, especially as I've made my feelings towards him more than clear in the past. That being said, his use of the pardon power to exonerate Michael Flynn, a man who twice pled guilty to the federal crime of lying to the FBI, is an interesting story, so I shall tell it. So, briefly, who is Michael Flynn? Yeah, I'd like to know. I have no idea. I mean, I feel like this, I know the name from being in the papers and stuff, but I don't know. Before becoming the national security advisor for the Trump administration, Michael Flynn was a fairly well-respected military man. He spent most of his 33-year career working for military intelligence, and when he retired, he had achieved the rank of 3-star general. Holy shit. Okay. It's impressive. After joining the Trump presidential campaign early on, his contributions included, among other things, leading a "lock her up" chant directed at Hillary Clinton using a pro-Trump rally because he believed she was a criminal who had lied to the FBI. And what did you end up going to prison for again, Michael? What was that? Obviously, if you're pardoned of it, doesn't mean you're technically innocent. So we can say he went to jail for this, but he's not guilty of it because pardons.
Pardon? 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 Pardon?
When Trump assumed the presidency, Flynn became the national security advisor, but unfortunately for him, he'd only hold the post for 24 days before he was fired by the president. But why was he fired? Well, it would later transpire that Flynn had engaged in a conversation with the Russian ambassador Sergei Kislyak, in which he said that Russia should not overreact with regards to sanctions placed on it by the Obama administration, and that once Trump had taken power, all could be made well. When he was questioned about this by the Vice President Mike Pence, Flynn denied that he had said anything of the sort. At this point, having no reason to disbelieve the national security advisor, Pence went on Fox News and, in front of the nation, or at least those members of the nation inclined to watch Fox News, staunchly defended his employee. The vice president was not the only person who asked Flynn about his conversation with Kislyak. The FBI was also pretty interested. Nothing if not persistent, Flynn told the Bureau the same lie that he had told the vice president. Is lying to the FBI a crime? I feel like unless you're under oath and like at a deposition or in court or something, you can lie to the police, can't you? I guess it's morally questionable if you're the national security advisor, but is that actually a crime? Let's find out.
FBI, open up!
Unfortunately for the vice president, it turned out that the FBI was running a wiretap on Kislyak and the lie was exposed. Flynn would later admit the truth as part of his cooperation with Robert Mueller's investigation into potential Russian collusion during the election. He was charged with knowingly making false statements to the FBI. Okay, apparently it is a crime. For reasons that I'm choosing not to guess at, President Trump granted his former national security advisor a full pardon. Announcing his decision on Twitter, he wrote, "It is my great honor to announce that General Michael T. Flynn has been granted a full pardon. Congratulations to General Flynn and his wonderful family. I know you will have a truly fantastic Thanksgiving." Although I'm keeping my thoughts about this to myself, a lot of other people did not. Adam Schiff, the then Democratic chair of the House Intelligence Committee, said, "Donald Trump has repeatedly abused the pardon power to reward friends and protect those who covered up for him. This time he pardons Michael Flynn, who lied to hide his dealings with the Russians. It's no surprise that Trump would go out as he came in, crooked to the ends." I mean, yeah, but don't lots of presidents issue lots of dodgy pardons, as I'm sure we're about to find out? Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, referred to the president's actions as an act of grave corruption and a brazen abuse of power. Except, I understand, but it's it's a pardon power. He's the president. He can do what he wants.
What? You just invented that. There's no such law.
The executive director of Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington said that the Flynn pardon once again shows that to Donald Trump, law and order does not apply to his wealthy white allies. It was merely a racist dog whistle meant to win him political support. Other notable pardons that were issued by President Trump include one for Roger Stone, Paul Manafort, and the man whom Trump arguably owed his successful presidential campaign to, Steve Bannon. Jesus Christ, a lot of people that Trump knows went to jail. An interesting bonus fact about Steve Bannon: he seems to be credited with bringing the phrase "a nothing burger," which I heard Simon use in a previous Brainblaze episode, into common usage. Really? I like that phrase. Bill Clinton pardons Marc Rich. This particular pardon was so controversial that it nearly resulted in its issuer, former President Bill Clinton, being indicted. So what was the deal? Wait. As I understood it, presidential pardons is like some executive privilege that the president gets to do. That's it. It's his choice. Like the children's television character with whom he shared a surname, Marc Rich really did live up to his name, earning billions of dollars through various investments and trades, one of which included a large stake in the 20th Century Fox Studios, which were eventually purchased by Rupert Murdoch for $250 million. Although, to anybody in their right mind, this is an inconceivably large amount of money, compared to his later earnings, it was pocket change. The later financial shenanigans that he would involve himself in would not only make him a multi-billionaire, but would show him to be somebody who had exactly no scruples when it came to how he obtained those billions. He was more than happy to trade with countries like Tehran, Libya, South Africa, and Cuba, even though the United States had imposed trade boycotts or embargoes at that time. And that applies to private citizens, right? It's not just government entities that can't do the trading. It's like, you can't trade with Russia private companies or like whoever's embargoed at the time. Although the United States government appeared to turn a blind eye to this for a while, Rich also committed the one crime which is guaranteed to result in a knock on the door: tax evasion.
I'm crazy enough to take on Batman, but the IRS? No, thank you.
In 1983, it was indicted on 65 charges, including racketeering and tax evasion. $50 million worth of tax evasion, to be exact. Although his company was forced to pay out nearly $200 million in various charges, Rich decided that he had become quite attached to his ill-gotten gains and hopped on a plane to Switzerland. Uh-oh, this is like the character from Billions, Axelrod. Doesn't he end up, he ends up going to Switzerland and getting like a Switzerland doesn't have like extradition? I feel like Switzerland's like, it's like a country that is all allied with Europe and America and shit. They're not going to be like, yo, America wants you back, mate. It's not in Lebanon. His casual escape from the long arm of the law really pissed off the IRS, and they offered a $500,000 reward for his capture and return to the US. What does that mean? Does that mean like some random bounty hunter could go like trolling around Switzerland looking for this dude, like searching in big mansions and being like, found you, and then like take him on a plane against his will? How does that work?
Jail.
Just to make any future travel plans even more difficult, he was placed on the FBI's most wanted list. Not too many spaces below Osama bin Laden. Hell. Not living in the United States doesn't appear to have limited his earning potential. According to Fortune magazine, he earned $300 million in 1988 alone. Although Switzerland does in fact have extradition with the United States, okay, they refused to extradite Rich on the grounds that, by treaty, extradition is only appropriate in cases of murder, robbery, burglary, counterfeiting, forgery, embezzlement, and breach of trust involving a fiduciary, not tax evasion. But didn't he, he was doing all of this other shit with, like, the embargoes. What was that? Breach of trust involving a fiduciary? I don't even know what that means. But I feel like they could get him on something else, couldn't they? Obviously, Rich had no particular wish to return to the United States, get arrested, and face charges. So he didn't. He probably would have continued not to do so until his death in 2013, if not for the actions of Bill Clinton in 2001. On his last day in office, he granted Rich, along with his business partner, who was also hiding out in Switzerland, a full pardon. So this guy essentially does all these crimes, goes to Switzerland, lives in Switzerland, makes tons more money, and then Bill Clinton's like, it's all good, come back to America if you want. That's kind of nuts. Understandably, many people were curious as to why somebody on the same list as Osama bin Laden, yeah, dude, granting someone a pardon, like Trump and all the previous pardons and stuff, but granting someone a pardon on the FBI's most wanted list? That's a biggie. And so the digging began. What this digging discovered was fairly interesting. Not long before Clinton engaged in this extraordinary act of clemency, Marc Rich's ex-wife had donated more than $1 million to the Democratic Party and almost $500,000 to the Clinton Presidential Library. Wow. Some people, exceptionally noisy and suspicious people, suggested that these two occurrences might be, in some way, linked to the granting of the pardon, and this led the FBI opening an investigation into the matter. Strangely, they ultimately decided that there was not enough evidence to proceed with an indictment. I shall leave it to you, Simon, and viewers, to pass your own judgment on this. It's it, man. You're rich enough, you get away with anything. President Ford pardons President Nixon. This is the one everyone knows this one. This is the most famous one. You would think that anybody capable of carrying out research, or indeed anybody who had ever seen an episode of Futurama, would be familiar with the Watergate scandal. Nevertheless, being somebody who has a child going through what passes for the education system these days, I'm aware that it is not just the joy of winning on sports days that has been removed from the syllabus. With that in mind, for our younger viewers, here's a brief, and I mean very brief, description of what happened. Incidentally, knowing how much of a ChatGPT supporter Simon is, yes! I thought I would be lazy and ask for a description of the Watergate scandal to present to you. Sadly, not only was it factually incorrect on several points, but it was rambling and inarticulate, and it would have been tantamount to stealing Simon's money had I included it. So here's my version. I want to know what ChatGPT got wrong, though.
Everything.
In the early 1970s, several individuals connected with the Nixon administration broke into the Democratic National Committee headquarters in the Watergate complex. After 5 of these individuals were arrested, investigations quickly discovered that Nixon and his higher-ups had been engaged in a sophisticated campaign of political espionage against their opponents and had used various government agencies to assist with this and to cover up the evidence. When this came out, largely due to the fact that there were audio recordings of conversations between Nixon and his cronies, which pretty conclusively proved that was what they'd been doing, many people wanted Nixon's head and not still alive, like in Futurama. As impeachment loomed large in his future, he decided that it would be better all round if he left, so he became the only president in United States history to resign. For anybody who is interested, I shall post the ChatGPT set version in the comment section when this video comes out. I'm definitely interested, and I'll be back to check out that comment section. When President Ford was sworn in just hours after Nixon and his family left the White House, he quickly became bored of almost every question at his press conference being about Nixon and quietly began making inquiries as to how the problem could be resolved. The end result of these inquiries was that on Sunday, September the 8th, 1974, President Ford announced that he was granting Nixon a full pardon for all offenses against the United States which he, Richard Nixon, has committed or may have committed. Bro, you just gave him blanket pardon. Any crimes that he may have committed. This was met with what could best be described as mixed feelings, with some of those in opposition even going so far as to suggest that there was some sort of conspiracy between Ford and Nixon. However, those in favor believed that President Ford's actions were particularly astute. When Nixon issued a statement in which he accepted the pardon, Ford had extracted from him an admission of guilt while also depriving the press of a long, drawn-out public court battle, which could have drawn the public's attention away from what Ford believed to be the important issues of the day. Although many people were suspicious at the time, lots of them would eventually decide that Ford's decision was the correct one, and he was later given the John F. Kennedy's Foundation's Profiles in Courage Award, which is described as an award that is given annually to an elected official who has withstood strong opposition to follow what she or he believes is the right course of action. Given that it has been frequently suggested that this pardon contributed to his loss in the 1976 election, I would say that the award was fairly well deserved.
You're officially pardoned from life.
President Jimmy Carter pardons draft dodgers. All of them? So much has been written with regards to different opinions on the Vietnam War that it seems futile to add anything, so I won't. Suffice to say, certainly towards the end, many Americans were not in favor of it. Largely because of these negative feelings, many American citizens were less than keen on the idea of being forcibly drafted into the armed services, and so avoided the draft in any way possible. Exactly how many people decided that the war was not for them is unclear, but almost 210,000 people were directly accused, with an estimated 360,000 others remaining undetected. In 1977, during his first day in office, President Carter issued an unconditional blanket pardon for anybody who had dodged the draft. It is just possible that this may have been one of the most divisive pardons ever granted in US history. Senator Barry Goldwater famously called it the most disgraceful thing a president has ever done. Feels like it belongs in today's modern political parlance, doesn't it? Whereas the Wall Street Journal's editorial board applauded Carter for his ability to treat the amnesty with the complexity they deserve. Doesn't seem very complex. It's just like, nah, it's all good. Yeah, we're all forgiven. With regards to normal citizens, a poll conducted shortly after the pardon was issued showed that only 20% of Americans were in favor. To me, at least, this seems slightly odd. Part of Carter's presidential campaign included repeated promises that should he be elected, he would issue the pardon within his first week of office. That's a hell of a good way to get some votes, isn't it? Regardless of your own feelings on the matter, we should probably applaud Carter for the particularly unusual modern-day political phenomenon of actually honoring promises made during the campaign. And that's where we end today's video. Thanks for watching. Oh, I see. They think there's something else. Can you imagine the disappointment? It's like, we've just stolen a bunch of braille books.
Joke's on you, I'm into that shit.